In today's video, you are going to learn an effective strategy or type of exercise to relearn how to weight shift onto an involved leg. So if you're someone where you're walking and this leg tends to stay out to the side, or when you try and single leg stand on an involved leg, you immediately start to fall towards your other side. Those are two things that indicate you might not be getting adequate weight shift over an involved leg. And that's what we're going to cover in today's video, is how to improve that weight shift onto an involved leg. If you're new to this channel, I'm Tara. I'm a neurologic physical therapist, and on this channel we talk about anything and everything related to mobility, health, fitness, and mindset, with the end goal of empowering you with as many tools as possible to take full ownership of your rehab and your overall health. And all that said, today we're going to cover an extremely common problem, and that is not being able to weight shift. Now, you might not identify that as your problem, but in most cases, if you are someone that cannot single leg stand because you always have a tendency to fall towards your uninvolved side, that's one indication that you're not weight shifting enough onto that involved leg. Another thing you might notice is if you're using a cane and you're trying to get off of a cane or stop using a cane and you can't because you have so much weight on that cane, that's another reason, or could be a sign, that you can't weight shift over your involved leg. Or if you're getting wrist pain in your uninvolved wrist, that could also be a sign that you're unable to weight shift over your involved leg. And there's several other areas where this would come up. Oh, one other area that I think is really important is if you can't cross your uninvolved leg over your involved leg, that is another sign that you might have difficulty or might not feel confident to weight shift over an involved leg. Now, how do you fix that? Well, most of you go to therapy, or you have a caregiver who has a belt on you and they're kind of pulling you in that direction to get over your involved leg. But in my experience, and in a recent article that I just read that really brought this back to my attention, that is not really an effective strategy. In most cases, what people will have a tendency to do is resist that motion. So if you have a caregiver, if you have someone that's trying to help you weight shift onto that leg and they're pulling you towards that side, there's something in your brain that wants to fight against that. It's almost like you're feeling like they're creating an error and you're trying to correct an error. And that's important, because what this article talks about is that is a really good strategy to use to relearn a correct movement. That our brains have a tendency to react to an error. So when our brains perceive something is going wrong, that we will react to that error. So we can use that to our advantage, and that's what this article did. It was a very, very small research study. There were just 14 subjects, but the treatment intervention that they did to retrain people how to weight shift, I think is something that I just automatically utilize, and now they're starting to get more data to support it. And that is what happens, all that long story just to tell you what would happen if someone pulled you toward your uninvolved side, towards the stronger side. Is it possible that you would react by correcting that error by shifting over your involved leg? And that was the hypothesis in this article. So I believe it works. It's a strategy that I use and I train caregivers to do. And that's not based on me diving deep into the science. That's just based on experience, that the more you pull someone over an involved leg, in most cases, not all cases, the more they resist that movement and actually shift further over to their uninvolved leg. One component, and this is why I was hesitant to share this treatment intervention or technique, one component of this is that they did this with people that were standing. So they just had people single leg stand and pulled them towards their uninvolved leg for a period of time. And And yes, they did correct by shifting towards that leg, but there wasn't a lot of carryover into actual walking. So doing that with someone standing wasn't a lot of carryover. Then they did it with people on a treadmill where they had something they built, a machine that most of you don't have access to. So that's another reason why I didn't really want to share this, but where they had a machine and they had rubber bands attached to the hips. And every time the person went to stand on that leg, there were bands that pulled them towards their uninvolved side. Now, the interesting thing about that component of the study was there was some carryover, but people had to walk over, I think it was like 220 feet or some length of distance. So another reason why I potentially didn't want to share this is because most of you don't have access to that kind of equipment that could put you over a treadmill. But I do think this idea of reacting to an error is kind of how our brains work. And so I wanted to share it with you and give you suggestions on how you might be able to recreate this, meaning create some kind of a force that pulls you toward your strong side in standing, which isn't ideal because it didn't show there was a lot of carryover, but at least it's a training tool that you can use to maybe at least get that sensation of what it feels like to shift over that leg. And we're going to do it using bands and wall anchors. So I switched the wall that I was anchored to, or I switched the leg that is going to be the involved leg because I wanted to switch the wall that the anchor was on. So hopefully you guys can follow. Duct tape is the involved leg. You want the bands pulling you in the opposite direction. I've talked about this quite a bit on this channel when I talk about single leg standing. Absolutely essential that you can get your center of mass over your base of support, right? Which means you have to get this little motion where you're moving that center of mass. You're going from 2 pillars to 1 pillar. You have to be able to shift your center of mass over that leg. What we're doing with the band is we're pulling you away from the direction you want to go. And the theory is that we react, our brains as humans, we react to errors. So your brain is sensing an error and you're just responding to that. So I think this is brilliant on several levels. Some of the motor planning areas of the brain will be eliminated. So you don't need some of those motor planning areas. So if you think about it this way, that it's basically like you just kind of go into safety mode. That's extremely simplified, but it's different areas of the brain where you're more just reacting to a balance disturbance, different areas of the brain. And so you're tapping into that a little bit. But then also there's some potential that we learn better by responding to errors than we do by by trying to execute like a perfect movement, if that makes sense. Okay? So you're gonna shift, step forward, step back. Shift, step forward, step back. Now you wanna be thinking about when it's pulling you this way, that you're fighting that resistance when you're stepping, okay? Now, this isn't ideal, but like I said, I'm trying to come up with things that you guys could do on your own at home. There is also probably a way to do this on your own at home on a treadmill, which actually would be the better case scenario. Again, based on this very, very small study, it appears that there's more carryover the longer someone walks with this force. Now, the downside is ideally you would just want that force when you're in stance phase on this leg, and that's really hard to recreate on your own. But I could foresee you doing this on a treadmill and just kind of wrapping a band around one side of the treadmill very lightly. And for those of you that are higher level, and make sure you use good judgment, don't get on a treadmill with bands pulling you around. If you've never been on a treadmill before, make sure you use really good judgment and you're aware of your deficits before you get on a treadmill. But I can foresee how you could just do this on a gym treadmill. And again, it's not ideal because you really just want that force when you're in the standing phase, but I do think that it is an option. So you could do that forward, backward stepping, and then you could also do like a crossover step and back where you're having to resist a little bit more against that. but anything where you have some kind of a force pulling you towards your strong side, and then you are reacting to that force, might potentially be beneficial in helping some of you get a longer stance time on your involved leg, not having it so far out to the side, but then also some of you to increase your single leg standing time. So just one little tip. I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did and you want to get more videos like this and you haven't yet subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell so that you will get notified every time I upload new videos. I enjoyed spending time with you all today, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a good day.